Hi everybody, today's topic is finding slope from 2 points. As a reminder, you do not need to write down everything we cover in this video, but be sure to jot down important information and at least one example of each type of problem that we cover. Also remember that you can pause the video to jot down important notes, rewind to view information again, and fast forward if you think you got it. Just be careful and make sure you don't fast forward too much that you miss out on something important. Let's begin. So last time we talked about how to find slope from a graph, and I'm telling you today that you can find slope by just using 2 points. This can save you a lot of time because then you won't need to sketch the line on a coordinate plane. You just need 2 points. However, this requires more math. So make sure that you pause the video and jot down the slope formula. The slope formula says that if you're given 2 points, x1 and y1 for the first point and x2 and y2 for the second point, the formula for slope is just m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And we'll give you an example coming up. So make sure that you have this in your notes before moving on. Okay. So remember that rise is on your y-axis because the y-axis is going up and down, and your run is on the x-axis since it's going left to right. You might want to jot this down because a lot of times people forget about this. They will mess up or mix up the formula and have x2 minus x1 on the top and y2 minus y1 on the bottom. The reason why y is on top is because the y is going up and down, and that gives you your rise. Rise is always on top. It's rise over run. So that's why the y is on the top. Other people remember it as the y's or the rise. They sound very similar. The y's on the top, and then the x is on the bottom. So it's the opposite of alphabetical order. So again, rise is up and down like the y-axis, that's why it's on top. And then run is on the bottom, your x's. Here are the steps to finding slope from 2 points. First of all, you have to label your 2 points as your x1 and y1, x2 and y2. And remember that x comes before y in your ordered pair. It's alphabetical. It doesn't matter, however, which point is point 1 or point 2. Then when you're done labeling the 2 points, you're going to just follow the formula. And remember that the y value goes first. It's on top. The order does matter when you are subtracting, though, and we'll go over what that means. So make sure you pause the video and get this down in your notes before moving on. Okay, so here's an example. In this example, we have -2, -1 as one point, and 4, 3 as our second point. So what I did in red is I labeled this as my first point. X is always before Y when you are labeling your points, and I made this my first point. That's why this is X1 and Y1. And this I labeled as my second point, X2 and Y2. So the 1 and the 2 just means which one you're calling point 1 versus point 2. And again, it doesn't matter which one you label as which. And then I am going to follow the formula. The formula has us subtracting the y's first. So I have 3 y2 minus y1 -1. So notice how I have 2 negatives next to each other. This is the y2 point 3 subtracting, this is the subtraction sign, the -1. This minus is the negative sign. Then I have to follow the same order. If I took the first point from the top and subtracted the bottom point, I need to make sure I do that. I can't just mix it up, okay? So 4 minus that -2. And then since we have those 2 minuses next to each other, they become addition because subtracting a negative is just like adding a positive. So 3 minus -1 becomes 3 plus 1. 4 minus -2 becomes 4 plus 2. So then we end up with 4 over 6 or 2 over 3. I could mix up the order or change the order where the bottom y1 is now subtracting the top y2. But for my bottom, I would also have to follow that same order. x1 minus x2. I'm basically just switching these around. But if I switch it around for the top, I gotta switch it around for the bottom. So this would be negative 1 minus 3, or on the bottom now, negative 2 minus 4. So if I switch it on top, I gotta switch it on the bottom as well. And this just becomes negative 1 minus 3, which is negative 4, negative 2 minus 4, which is negative 6. Those two negatives cancel out. I still get 4/6 or 2/3. So the placement of your x and y have to stay the same. And the y's are always subtracted, and the order matters. Okay? Here is the same problem, but instead I have labeled it a little differently. So in this problem, I have labeled it so that the x1, y1 is on top. In the previous one, I just made this one x2, but now I'm just labeling this as x1. And this one is x2 and y2. And that doesn't change the problem as well. It doesn't matter which point you call point 1 and point 2, as long as you follow that formula. So following this formula, I have y2, negative 1, minus y1, minus 3. And on the bottom, if I started with the second point, I gotta start with the second point for the bottom as well. Negative 2 minus 4. Those become negative 4 over negative 6, cancel out the negatives, becomes 4/6 or 2/3. So the other thing I could do is take my top point and subtract my bottom point, but it has to follow the same order. So 3 minus negative 1 on top and 4 minus negative 2 on the bottom. And that'll become 3 plus 1 over 4 plus 2, or 4/6 or 2/3. So again, it doesn't matter which one you call x1, y1, the top one or the bottom point, as long as the y's are subtracted on top and the x's are subtracted on the bottom. And if you follow one order, you have to follow that same order on the bottom as well. So meaning I can't just take 3 minus negative 1, but then for the bottom one do negative 2 minus 4. I got to go in the same direction. If I'm taking the top number minus the bottom number, I also have to take the top number minus the bottom number for the x's. Okay? Let's go over some examples. This problem is asking us to find the slope of the line through negative 9, negative 6, and 3, negative 9. Pause the video and try it on your own first. Okay, so normally what I like to do is just go in order. x1, y1, x2, y2. But again, like I said before, you could have called this one x2, y2, and this one x1, y1. Okay, doesn't really matter which one it is. Then we're going to follow the formula. The formula tells us that the y's need to be subtracted first on the top. Let me give myself some more room. So I have the subtraction, the change, that's what the triangle means, of y on top and the x's on the bottom. And remember, I just have to go in the same order. So if I take this negative 6 and subtract this negative 9, I have to do the same thing for my x's. I have to go in that same order. So if I have negative 6 minus negative 9, on the bottom, I have to go in the same order, negative 9 minus 3. Negative 6 minus negative 9 becomes negative 6 plus 9, because those two negatives become a plus. Negative 9 minus 3, there's two negatives, so it becomes negative 12. And the top one is a subtraction. Negative 6 plus 9 is a positive 3. So it becomes 3 over negative 12. If I reduce that and divide top and bottom by 3, I get 1 over negative 4. Okay, so then it makes my answer this one right here. Okay. So label them, do the subtraction, y's on top, make sure you follow the same order. Let's do another problem. Try this problem on your own first. What is the slope of the line through negative 1, negative 7, and 3, 9? Pause the video and try it on your own. Okay, so I'm going to label my points. Again, it doesn't really matter which one is labeled as point 1 versus point 2. I can go in reverse order, that's fine. And later on I have to make sure my order is the same. So if I subtract my y's this way, I'm going to have to subtract my x's this way, and vice versa, okay? So I can go this way for my y's, but I also have to go this way for my x's. All right, so slope is the change in y over the change in x when I subtract them. So let's see, if I subtract my y's this way, this would be negative 7 minus 9. And my x's have to follow the same order, so it's negative 1 minus 3. So yours can be slightly different as long as you get the same answer. Negative 7 minus 9 is negative 16 because they're both negatives. They just become a bigger or smaller negative. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. I'm going to divide both by 4. So I end up with negative 4 over negative 1. Those negatives cancel out to become positive. So 4 divided by 1 is just a positive 4. So my answer is positive 4. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions as you work on these slope problems. Remember, there are several different ways that you can solve these problems and get the same answer. You just have to make sure that you're subtracting in the same order, and the y's are always subtracted on the top. 4 different people could solve the same problem in 4 different ways. So your solution, your work, doesn't have to exactly match mine, as long as you have the correct sign and correct number at the very end. Let me know if you have any questions as you work on these, and I'll see you in class.